This is HOA meltdown moments. She threatened a hearing over slush. That packed path is still ice, and you know it. Sharon waved the handheld infrared thermometer at my walkway like it was a radar gun, and she had just clocked me doing 90 in a school zone. She jabbed it toward the concrete and yelled that the surface was too cold to be safe, and she was issuing an emergency hazard fine unless I applied more de-icer right now. It was 11 at night. The walkway was clear. I had salted it 3 hours ago. I stood there in my gray parka with the hood up, checking my watch because I had a site rollout call at 6 in the morning, and I did not have time for this. Sharon stepped closer. The Meadows Landing Association Compliance Patrol, she called herself. Vendor coordinator was her actual title, which meant she was supposed to manage snow removal contractors and landscaping companies. But somewhere along the line, she had decided that managing vendors also meant enforcing every snow and ice rule in the book with the zeal of a corrections officer. She had been doing this for 2 winters now. This was my 2nd winter here, and she had been on me since November. Milwaukee gets lake effect snow. The HOA claims sidewalks must be cleared within a strict window after snowfall, and the clock is running the second the first flake stops. Sharon interprets that window however she wants. You can be mad, or you can be compliant, she said. She said it every time. That was her line. Her voice was flat and cold, like she was reading a script she had memorized and enjoyed. She aimed the thermometer at the walkway again and shook her head. 28 degrees. Ice hazard. You are getting a notice and a fine. If you do not apply additional treatment within the next hour, I am escalating this to emergency non-compliance, and your vehicle access will be restricted. My work van was parked in the driveway. I am a telecom project coordinator. I live in spreadsheets and deployment logs. My van has tools, test equipment, spare fiber spools, and a mobile hotspot rig that costs more than most people's cars. My work depends on being able to park that vehicle on my property and get to job sites on time. Sharon knew that. She had been asking about my schedule for weeks, making notes every time I came or went. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth, Sharon said. She held up a small leather notebook. She flipped it open to show me a page covered in her handwriting. Dates, times, temperatures, alleged violations. She snapped a photo of my walkway with her own phone, standing so close to my property line that her boots were practically on my driveway. The angle made the snow along the edge look like it was encroaching onto the path. It was not. She staged it. I took a photo of her taking the photo. She saw me and smiled. I asked her why she was here at 11 at night. She said the compliance patrol operates after hours to catch violations that homeowners try to hide during the day. I asked her what that meant. She said some people only pretend to comply when they know someone is watching. She said my walkway had been reported as a slip hazard by another resident and she was obligated to investigate immediately. I asked who reported it. She said that was confidential. I asked when the report came in. She said this afternoon. I asked why she waited until 11 at night to show up. She ignored the question and wrote something in her notebook. I write down every word, I told her, because later I plan to read them back to you. She looked up from her notebook. Her face did not change. She said that was fine, and she welcomed documentation because it would only prove she was right. She flipped to another page and showed me a printout of the HOA snow removal policy. It was laminated. She had highlighted sections in yellow. One section said homeowners must maintain walkways free of ice hazards at all times during winter months. Another section said the board or its designee may conduct inspections at any time to ensure compliance. A third section said emergency fines may be issued without prior notice if a safety hazard is identified. She tapped the laminated page. Emergency hazard fine. $50. Payable within 72 hours or it doubles. If you do not treat this walkway within 1 hour, I am adding a non-compliance escalation fee and restricting your vehicle access pending a hearing. I asked what restricting vehicle access meant. She said the HOA has the authority to block driveways or arrange for vehicle removal if a property is in emergency non-compliance. I asked if she was threatening to tow my van. She said she was not threatening anything. She was informing me of the consequences. A rideshare driver pulled up across the street and sat there with the engine running, waiting for his passenger. He looked over at us. I saw him shake his head and pull out his phone, probably texting his passenger to hurry up because there was some HOA nonsense happening outside. Sharon glanced at him, then turned back to me. She held up the infrared thermometer again. I am giving you 1 hour. Set a timer. If I come back and this path is not treated, your van goes on the tow list. I asked her what treating the path meant. I had already salted it. She said clearly it was not enough because the surface temperature indicated residual ice formation risk. I asked if she had actually checked for ice or if she was just aiming a thermometer at cold concrete. She said the temperature reading was sufficient evidence under the guidelines. I asked what guidelines. She said the board had adopted winter safety protocols and she was authorized to enforce them. I asked to see the protocols. She said they were available in the community portal. I said I had checked the portal that morning and there was nothing about temperature thresholds. She said maybe I should check again. She walked to the edge of my driveway and crouched down. She pulled out a can of something from her coat pocket and sprayed a bright yellow mark on my walkway. Boot print shape. She stood up and took another photo. That is your non-compliance marker, she said. When I return, if that marker is still visible and the path is not treated, the fine escalates. I asked if she just vandalized my property. She said it was water-soluble marking paint used by the Compliance Patrol to document inspection points. I asked when the HOA started using marking paint. She said it was a new tool approved by the board last month. I asked for the board meeting minutes. She said they were in the portal. Sharon capped the spray can and dropped it back in her pocket. She wrote another note in her notebook. Then she looked at me and said, "You can fight this if you want, but you will lose." The board backs me. The management company backs me. The snow contractor backs me. You are one homeowner. I have 300 units in this community, and most of them follow the rules without drama. If you want to be the problem case, go ahead. It will not end well for you. She turned and walked toward a white SUV parked 2 houses down. I took a photo of her license plate. She saw me do it. She did not care. The rideshare driver finally pulled away. I stood there for a minute, looking at the yellow boot print on my walkway. It looked like a crime scene marker. I checked my watch. It was 11:15. I had to be up in less than 6 hours. I had 3 project sites to coordinate, 2 conference calls with engineers in different time zones, and a fiber deployment schedule that was already a week behind. I did not have time to fight an HOA vendetta at midnight, but I also did not have a choice. If Sharon followed through and called a tow truck, I would miss my morning rollout and the client would escalate to my manager. That could not happen. I went inside and grabbed my laptop. I logged into the community portal and searched for winter safety protocols. Nothing. I searched for temperature thresholds. Nothing. I searched for marking paint. Nothing. I pulled up the board meeting minutes from last month. The only item related to snow removal was a budget line approving a contract extension for the plowing company. No mention of compliance patrols. No mention of infrared thermometers. No mention of marking paint. I took screenshots of everything. Then I went back outside with another bottle of de-icer and soaked the walkway. I dumped the entire bottle. The pavement was white with salt crystals. I took a photo. I checked the time. 11:32. I sent the photo to my own email with a timestamp. Then I stood there in the cold and waited to see if Sharon would come back. She did not come back that night, but the next morning I found a certified letter taped to my front door. Violation notice, $50 fine. Non-compliance escalation pending. The letter said I had failed to adequately treat my walkway after an emergency inspection, and the compliance patrol had documented continued ice hazard conditions at 11:45 the previous night. I checked my phone. I had been outside salting the walkway at 11:45. Sharon had not come back. She was lying. The letter also said my vehicle access was under review and I should not park in my driveway pending the outcome of a compliance hearing. I looked at my van. It was still there. I got in and drove to my first site before anyone could show up with a tow truck. I called the management company from the road. The receptionist put me on hold for 9 minutes. When someone finally picked up, it was a guy named Derek who said he was the compliance liaison. I asked about the violation notice. He said Sharon had filed a report and the fine was valid. I asked how she could document conditions at 11:45 when she was not there. He said the compliance patrol uses time-stamped photographic evidence and infrared data. I asked to see the photo. He said it was in the file and I could request a copy by submitting a formal records request. I asked how long that would take. He said 7 to 10 business days. I asked what I was supposed to do about my van in the meantime. He said if the vehicle was parked in violation of a compliance hold, it could be towed at the owner's expense. I said there was no hold, just a review. He said the review was ongoing and I should avoid creating additional violations. I got back home that afternoon and found a bright orange sticker on my van windshield. Unauthorized parking. Vehicle subject to removal. Contact Meadows Landing Association management immediately. I peeled the sticker off and went inside. I called the management company again. Derek answered. I asked about the sticker. He said Sharon had flagged my vehicle as being in non-compliance parking and the tow authorization was already in the system. I said I lived here and I was parked in my own driveway. He said the driveway was considered restricted access due to the ongoing safety violation, and I needed to move the vehicle to guest parking until the hearing. I asked when the hearing was. He said it had not been scheduled yet. I asked how I was supposed to get to work. He said that was not the association's concern. I moved the van to guest parking. It was 4 blocks away. I walked back in the snow and slush, checking my watch every 30 seconds because I had a call in 20 minutes and I still needed to download updated deployment maps. The guest lot was not plowed as well as the main streets. My boots sank into 3 inches of wet snow. By the time I got home, my socks were soaked and I had missed the call. My manager left me a voicemail asking why I was not on the line and reminding me that client communication was a performance metric. That night, Sharon came back. This time, it was 9:30. I was on a site call when I heard a knock. I looked out the window and saw her standing on my walkway with a flashlight, inspecting the pavement. She was wearing the same purple parka. She had a clipboard this time. I ended the call and went outside. She did not look up. She crouched down and scraped at the yellow boot print with a gloved finger. Then she stood up and took another photo. I asked what she was doing. She said she was conducting a follow-up inspection to verify treatment compliance. I said I had dumped an entire bottle of de-icer on the walkway. She said the marker was still visible and the surface temperature was still below the safety threshold. I asked what the threshold was. She said 32 degrees. I pointed out that it was winter in Milwaukee and the air temperature was 24 degrees. She said that was irrelevant. Sharon made a note on her clipboard. She said the violation was continuing and the fine was now $100. I asked if she was doubling the fine for something I had already treated. She said I had not treated it adequately. I said I had photos proving I applied de-icer. She said my photos did not include temperature readings or timestamps verified by the Compliance Patrol. I said her timestamps were fake because she was not here when she claimed she was. She looked at me with that same flat expression. "You can say whatever you want," she said. "My records are official. Yours are not." She handed me another printed notice. This one said my driveway access was now fully restricted pending a hearing, and my vehicle must remain in guest parking or be removed from the property. It said if I parked in my driveway again, the vehicle would be towed immediately, and I would be responsible for all towing and storage fees, plus an additional non-compliance fine. I asked when the hearing was. She said the board was reviewing my case and I would be notified. I asked how long that would take. She said it depended on the board's schedule. I asked if I could attend the next board meeting. She said board meetings were not open to homeowners unless they were on the agenda. I asked how I got on the agenda. She said I had to submit a request in writing to the management company at least 2 weeks in advance. I took the notice inside and read it 3 times. Then I called a friend of mine who works at the courthouse. Her name is Jen. She handles filing procedures for civil disputes and small claims. I asked if an HOA could legally restrict my driveway access over a dispute about de-icer. She said it depended on the governing documents and whether the HOA was following its own enforcement procedures. She said if they were not following their own rules, I could file a complaint. She asked if I had copies of the HOA bylaws and the enforcement policy. I said I had the member handbook, but it was vague. She said I needed to get the actual governing documents, the ones filed with the state. She said those were public record and I could request them from the county. She also said I should document everything and start building a paper trail because HOAs hate paper trails. I spent the next 2 days requesting documents. I filed a records request with the county for the HOA's articles of incorporation and bylaws. I filed another request with the management company for all board meeting minutes from the past year, all Compliance Patrol policies, and all vendor contracts related to snow removal. The county sent me a PDF within 24 hours. The management company sent me an email saying my request was being reviewed and I would receive a response within 10 business days. The county documents were interesting. The Meadows Landing Association was incorporated in 1998. The bylaws said the board must hold monthly meetings and must make minutes available to homeowners within 30 days. The bylaws also said any rule changes or new policies must be approved by a board vote and documented in the meeting minutes. I searched the bylaws for any mention of compliance patrols, temperature thresholds, marking paint, or vehicle towing authority. Nothing. I searched for emergency fines. There was a section on fines, but it said fines could only be issued after written notice and an opportunity to cure. It said homeowners had 14 days to fix a violation before a fine could be assessed. It did not say anything about emergency fines or same-day enforcement. I called Derek at the management company. I asked if Sharon was following the bylaws. He said the board had given Sharon discretionary authority to enforce winter safety rules under an emergency provision. I asked what emergency provision. He said it was discussed at a board meeting. I asked which meeting. He said he would have to check. I asked for the minutes. He said my records request was still being processed. I said the bylaws required minutes to be available within 30 days and it had been 6 months since the last posted minutes on the portal. He said he would look into it and get back to me. He did not get back to me. 2 days later, my van was gone. I walked to the guest lot and found an empty space where I had parked it. There was a tow notice sticker on the ground. It said the vehicle had been removed for non-compliance parking, and I could retrieve it from a towing company called Rapid Response Auto Recovery. I called the number. A woman answered and said my van was in their impound lot and the fee was $275 for the tow plus $50 per day storage. I asked why it was towed. She said the HOA had authorized the removal. I said I was parked in guest parking, which was allowed. She said the authorization came from the compliance patrol and I would need to take it up with them. I asked when I could get my van. She said I could pick it up any time after paying the fees. I said I needed the van for work today. She said I should have thought of that before I violated the parking rules. I called Jen. She said the HOA could not legally tow my vehicle from guest parking without cause and without following the enforcement procedure in the bylaws. She said I should file a complaint with the towing company and demand they release the vehicle without fees. She also said I should file a state procedure complaint against the HOA for violating their own bylaws and for retaliatory enforcement. She said the state has an HOA dispute resolution process, and if I could prove the HOA was not following proper procedure, the state could force them to respond and potentially award me damages. She walked me through the filing process. I needed to document every violation of procedure, every inconsistency in Sharon's enforcement, and every attempt I had made to resolve the issue through normal channels. I spent the rest of the day building the complaint. I pulled together my timeline, the first incident on my walkway at 11 at night, the fake timestamp on Sharon's follow-up inspection, the missing board meeting minutes, the bylaws requirement for 14 days to cure before fining, the vehicle tow from guest parking with no valid authorization. I attached photos, I attached the violation notices, I attached my emails to the management company, I attached the county records showing the bylaws. I submitted the complaint online. The state sent me a confirmation email saying my case had been assigned a number and the HOA would be notified within 5 business days. Then I called the towing company back. I told them I had filed a state complaint and I was disputing the tow authorization. The woman on the phone said that was between me and the HOA. I said if they did not release my vehicle, I would add them to the complaint for unlawful impoundment. She put me on hold. 5 minutes later, a manager came on the line. He said he had reviewed the authorization and it came from Sharon Clark, compliance coordinator for Meadows Landing Association. He said the authorization listed my vehicle as being parked in a restricted zone. I said guest parking was not a restricted zone. He said the authorization stated otherwise. I asked if he had verified the authorization with the HOA board or the management company. He said they rely on the compliance coordinator to provide accurate information. I said the compliance coordinator was lying. He said I could file a dispute with the HOA. I said I already had. He said my van would remain impounded until the fees were paid or the HOA rescinded the authorization. I did not have $275 to throw away on a bogus tow. I also did not have time to wait for the state complaint to play out. I needed my van. I called my manager and explained the situation. He was not happy. He said the client was asking questions and I needed to be on site tomorrow morning or we were going to lose the contract. I said I was trying to get my vehicle released. He said he did not care about my HOA drama. He cared about the deployment schedule. I said I understood. I hung up and stared at the wall for a minute. Then I grabbed my coat and my phone and walked to the gas station 6 blocks away to buy more de-icer. Because at this point, I was going to document every single thing Sharon tried to pull, and I was going to bury her in her own rules. If you are loving this HOA chaos, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to get so much wilder. I was standing in line at the gas station when Sharon walked in. She did not see me at first. She went straight to the coffee counter and poured herself a cup. I watched her check her phone. She was smiling. I pulled out my own phone and opened the camera. Then I walked over. She looked up. The smile disappeared. I said, "Funny running into you here." She said nothing. I said, "I just got off the phone with the towing company." My van was removed from guest parking. She said I was parked in violation of the compliance hold. I said guest parking was not covered by the hold. She said any vehicle associated with a non-compliant property could be removed from any association lot. I said that was not in the bylaws. She said it was in the emergency winter protocols. I asked to see the protocols. She said I could request them through the management company. I said I already had. I said they had been stalling for 2 weeks. She took a sip of her coffee and said that was not her problem. I held up my phone. I said I was recording this conversation. She said I could record whatever I wanted. I said I had also filed a state procedure complaint. Her expression changed. Not much, but enough. She asked what I meant. I said I had filed a formal complaint with the state alleging the HOA was not following its own bylaws, was issuing fines without proper notice, and was conducting retaliatory enforcement. I said the state was going to require the HOA to respond and provide documentation. I said if the HOA could not provide proof that Sharon was operating within her authority, the complaint would stand and the HOA would be forced to rescind all fines and fees. Sharon set her coffee down. She said I was wasting my time. She said the board would back her up and the state would dismiss the complaint. I said maybe, but the state would still require a response, and that response would have to include board meeting minutes, enforcement policies, and the vendor contracts that authorized her to call tow trucks. I said I was looking forward to seeing those contracts because I was betting they did not exist, or if they did exist, they were not properly approved. Sharon picked up her coffee again. She said I had no idea what I was talking about. I said I had the bylaws. I had the county records. I had timestamps. I had photos. I had a paper trail. I asked what she had. She said she had 3 years of compliance records and the full support of the board. I stepped closer. I said, "Here is what I know. You showed up at my house at 11 at night and threatened to fine me for an ice hazard that did not exist. You took a fake timestamp photo to make it look like I did not treat my walkway. You towed my van from guest parking using an authorization you do not have the power to issue. You are running a shakedown, and you are doing it because you think no one will call you on it. But I am calling you on it. I have already filed the state complaint. I am going to file a complaint with the towing company. I am going to request every single document the HOA has on file. And if you keep pushing, I am going to show up at the next board meeting and read your own bylaws to you in front of everyone." Sharon stared at me. Then she laughed. She said, "You really think you are going to win this? You think the board is going to side with you over me? I manage every vendor in this community. I handle the snow removal, the landscaping, the maintenance contracts. The board does not even read half the invoices I send them. They just approve them. Because they trust me. You are nobody. You are one angry homeowner who does not want to follow the rules. The board has seen 100 people like you. You will lose." I said, "We will see." I paid for my de-icer and walked out. Sharon stayed inside. I checked my phone. I had recorded the entire conversation. I saved the video to 3 different places. Then I walked home. The next morning, I got an email from the management company. It said my records request had been partially fulfilled and I could pick up copies of the board meeting minutes from the office during business hours. I drove to the office. It was in a strip mall 20 minutes away. The receptionist handed me a manila envelope. Inside were 4 pages, meeting minutes from October, November, and December. They were all identical. Same format, same headers, same generic language. Each one said the board had met, reviewed financial reports, and approved routine expenditures. None of them mentioned compliance patrols. None of them mentioned emergency winter protocols. None of them mentioned Sharon. I asked the receptionist if this was everything. She said that was all they had on file. I asked where the minutes from January through September were. She said she would have to check with Derek. I asked if Derek was in. She said he was not. I asked when he would be in. She said she did not know. I took the envelope and left. I called Jen on the way home. I told her about the minutes. She said it sounded like the HOA was not keeping proper records, which was a violation of the bylaws and possibly a violation of state law. She said if the board had not been documenting its meetings, that meant any actions taken by the board in the past year were not properly authorized. That included any delegation of authority to Sharon. She said I should include this in my state complaint as evidence of procedural failure. She also said I should request the vendor contracts directly from the board, not from the management company, because the board was ultimately responsible for oversight. I sent an email to the board president. I had to dig through the portal to find his contact information. His name was Greg. I said I was requesting copies of all vendor contracts related to snow removal and compliance enforcement. I said I was also requesting documentation of any board actions delegating enforcement authority to Sharon Clark. I said this was a formal request under the bylaws, and I expected a response within 14 days. I sent the email and waited. 3 days later, I got a response. Not from Greg, from Sharon. The email said I was harassing board members and disrupting association business. It said any further contact with board members outside of official channels would be considered a violation of community conduct rules and could result in fines or legal action. It said all homeowner inquiries must go through the management company. I forwarded the email to Jen. She said Sharon had just made a huge mistake. She said an HOA could not prohibit homeowners from contacting board members, especially when the homeowner was requesting documents required by the bylaws. She said this email was evidence of retaliation and I should add it to my complaint. I updated the state complaint. I attached the email. I attached the incomplete meeting minutes. I attached the bylaws section requiring proper documentation. I submitted the update. The state sent me a confirmation. Then I waited. 2 weeks later, I got a notice in the mail. It was from the HOA. It said I was banned from using any community amenities, including the clubhouse, pool, gym, and guest parking, pending resolution of ongoing compliance violations. It said the ban was effective immediately, and any attempt to access the amenities would result in trespassing charges. I read it twice. Then I laughed. I did not use the amenities. I worked 60 hours a week, and the last time I had been in the clubhouse was when I signed my lease 2 years ago. But the ban meant I could not park in guest parking, which meant if I moved my van back to my driveway, Sharon would have another excuse to tow it. I called Jen. She said the ban was retaliatory and almost certainly unenforceable. She said the bylaws probably allowed the board to restrict amenities only for safety reasons or for failure to pay dues, not for disputing a compliance action. She said I should ignore the ban and park my van wherever I was legally allowed to park. I said I was not going to give Sharon another reason to call a tow truck. Jen said that was smart. She said the state complaint was moving forward and the HOA would have to respond soon. She said once they responded, I would be able to see exactly what documentation they had, and if they did not have documentation, the complaint would stand. I went back to the towing company. I paid the fees. $275 for the tow, $150 for 6 days of storage, $425 total. I signed a form acknowledging the charges. The clerk handed me my keys. I drove my van back to the guest lot. Then I walked home and added the tow receipt to my complaint file. The total I was owed was now $575, $50 for the first bogus fine, $100 for the doubled fine, and $425 for the tow. Plus filing fees when I eventually took this to small claims court. The next week, Sharon left a voicemail on my phone. She said the board had scheduled a hearing for my case and I was required to attend. She said the hearing was next Tuesday at 7 in the evening in the clubhouse. She said if I did not attend, the board would make a decision in my absence and the fines would become permanent. She said I was allowed to bring documentation, but I was not allowed to bring a lawyer or record the proceedings. I saved the voicemail. Then I called Jen. She said I absolutely could bring a lawyer to an HOA hearing, and I absolutely could record it as long as I was a participant. She said Sharon was lying again. Jen said she would come with me to the hearing and take notes. She said she could not represent me because she was not an attorney, but she could sit in as a witness and document everything that was said. I showed up at the hearing with Jen and my evidence binder. The binder had tabs: timeline, photos, emails, bylaws, meeting minutes, county records, tow receipt, state complaint confirmation. I also brought my phone. Jen brought a notepad. We walked into the clubhouse and found Sharon sitting at a folding table with 3 board members. Greg was there. So was a woman named Linda and a man named Paul. Sharon saw me and frowned. She saw Jen and frowned harder. She said, "Who is this?" I said, "This is my witness." She said witnesses were not allowed. I said the bylaws did not prohibit witnesses. Greg looked uncomfortable. Linda whispered something to him. Paul was scrolling on his phone. Sharon opened a folder. She said the hearing was to address ongoing non-compliance with winter safety rules and unauthorized contact with board members. She said I had been issued 2 fines totaling $150, had parked my vehicle in violation of a compliance hold, and had sent harassing emails to the board president. She said the board was considering additional fines and possible legal action. She looked at Greg. He nodded. Linda nodded. Paul was still on his phone. I opened my binder. I said I wanted to address the non-compliance claim first. I pulled out the bylaws. I read the section on fines. It said fines could only be issued after written notice and a 14-day cure period. I said Sharon had issued fines on the same day as the alleged violation with no cure period. I said that violated the bylaws. Sharon said the emergency winter protocols allowed for immediate enforcement. I asked to see the protocols. She said they were approved by the board. I asked when. She looked at Greg. Greg said he thought it was last year. I asked if it was documented in the meeting minutes. Greg said he would have to check. I pulled out the 4 pages of meeting minutes I had received from the management company. I said these were the only minutes on file for the past year, and none of them mentioned emergency protocols. Linda looked at Greg. Paul looked up from his phone. I said, "Let me ask this a different way. Did the board ever vote to approve emergency winter protocols?" Greg said he did not remember a specific vote. Linda said she thought Sharon had just implemented them as part of her vendor coordination role. I said vendor coordination does not include enforcement authority. I said the bylaws give enforcement authority to the board, not to individual coordinators. Sharon said the board had delegated that authority to her. I asked when. She said it was discussed informally. I said informal delegation was not valid under the bylaws. Greg shifted in his chair. Linda whispered to him again. I moved to the next tab. Photos. I pulled out the pictures I had taken of my walkway the night Sharon claimed I had not treated it. I pulled out the timestamps. I said Sharon had documented a violation at 11:45, but I had photos showing I was outside treating the walkway at that exact time. I said Sharon had not been there. I said her report was fabricated. Sharon said her timestamps were based on infrared readings and inspection records, not physical presence. I said that made no sense. I said if she was not there, she could not have taken a reading. She said the reading was taken earlier and documented later. I said that was not what her report claimed. I pulled out her violation notice. I read it aloud. It said inspection conducted at 11:45. Not reading documented later. Inspection conducted. Greg looked at Sharon. Sharon said it was a clerical error. I said it was fraud. Jen wrote that down. Linda asked if we could move on. I said sure. I moved to the next tab. Tow receipt. I said Sharon had authorized a tow of my vehicle from guest parking. I said guest parking was not restricted. I said the tow was unlawful. Sharon said my vehicle was associated with a non-compliant property and therefore subject to removal. I asked where that rule was written. She said it was part of the emergency protocols. I said the emergency protocols did not exist. She said they did exist, they just were not posted yet. I asked why they were not posted. She said the board was still finalizing the language. I asked how she could enforce rules that were not finalized. Greg rubbed his face. Paul finally spoke. He said, "This is a mess." Linda agreed. She said they should table the hearing and revisit it after the board reviewed the documentation. Sharon said that was not necessary. She said the violations were clear. Paul said they did not look clear to him. He said it looked like Sharon had been enforcing rules that did not exist and issuing fines without following procedure. Sharon said she had been doing her job. Paul said maybe, but if the bylaws required a 14-day cure period and she did not give one, then the fines were not valid. Greg nodded slowly. Linda nodded. Sharon looked furious. I pulled out the last tab. County records. I said I had reviewed the HOA's articles of incorporation and bylaws with the county. I said I had also requested the vendor contracts for snow removal and compliance services. I said the management company had not provided them. I asked if the board had copies. Greg said he thought they were on file with the management company. I said the management company claimed they were with the board. Linda said she had never seen a compliance services contract. Paul said he had not either. I looked at Sharon. I said, "So who authorized you to call tow trucks and issue fines?" Sharon did not answer. I said I had filed a state procedure complaint. I said the state was going to require the HOA to produce documentation showing that Sharon was acting within her authority. I said if the HOA could not produce that documentation, the complaint would stand and all of Sharon's enforcement actions would be voided. I said that included the fines, the tow, and the amenities ban. I said the HOA would also be required to pay my filing fees and reimburse my costs. Jen wrote that down. Greg cleared his throat. He said the board would need to consult with the management company and possibly an attorney. He said the hearing was adjourned pending further review. Sharon started to object. Greg cut her off. He said the hearing was over. Linda stood up. Paul followed her out. Sharon sat there for a moment, staring at me. Then she grabbed her folder and left. Jen and I stayed for a minute. She said, "That went well." I said it was not over yet. She said no, but I had just put the board in a position where they either had to back Sharon without documentation or cut her loose. She said most boards would cut her loose. I went home and waited. 4 days later, I got an email from Greg. It said the board had reviewed my documentation and determined that several enforcement actions had not followed proper procedure. It said the fines were being rescinded. It said the vehicle tow was being reviewed with the management company and the towing contractor. It said the amenities ban was being lifted. It said the board was also conducting an internal review of compliance procedures and vendor authorizations. The email did not mention Sharon by name. It did not apologize. But it was enough. 2 days after that, I got a call from the towing company. The manager said they had reviewed the authorization for my vehicle tow and determined it was issued without proper board approval. He said they were refunding the tow and storage fees. He said the check would be mailed within 10 business days. He also said they were canceling their contract with the Meadows Landing Association due to concerns about authorization procedures. I thanked him and hung up. The check arrived, $425. I deposited it. Then I got another email from Greg. It said the board had discovered that the management company contract had expired 6 months ago and had not been renewed. He said the board was in the process of securing a new management company. He said during the transition, all compliance actions were suspended. He said homeowners should continue to follow community rules, but enforcement would resume only after proper policies were documented and approved by the board. I forwarded the email to Jen. She said the expired contract explained everything. She said without a valid management company contract, Sharon had been operating with no legal authority. She said any fines or enforcement actions she had taken in the past 6 months were void. She said if other homeowners had been fined or harassed, they could file complaints and get refunds too. I asked if I should tell people. She said I should post the email in the community group chat and let people figure it out. I posted it. Within an hour, the group chat exploded. People started sharing their own stories. A guy named Mike said Sharon had fined him $200 for leaving his trash cans out overnight. A woman named Tina said Sharon had threatened to tow her car because she parked in a visitor spot for 3 days while her garage was being repaired. Someone else said Sharon had tried to fine them for holiday lights in January. The thread went on for hours. Someone tagged Sharon. She did not respond. Then, the post disappeared. The moderator said it had been removed for violating community guidelines. 10 minutes later, a new post appeared. It was from Greg. It said the board was aware of concerns regarding compliance enforcement and was conducting a thorough review. It said homeowners who believed they had been unfairly fined could submit a complaint to the board for review. The next week, Sharon was gone. No announcement, no explanation. She just stopped showing up. Her name disappeared from the HOA website. Her email bounced. Someone in the group chat said she had resigned. Someone else said she had been fired. Greg never confirmed either way. But the compliance patrol stopped. The yellow boot print markers stopped. The midnight inspection stopped. I got a final email from the state. It said my procedure complaint had been closed because the HOA had taken corrective action. It said the HOA had agreed to pay my filing fees and to implement new policies to prevent future procedural violations. The email included a check for $68. Filing fees. I cashed it. A month later, I ran into Greg at the mailboxes. He said the board had hired a new management company and they were rewriting the enforcement policies. He said the new policies would include clear procedures, proper notice requirements, and an appeals process. He said they were also hiring a new compliance coordinator, but this time the position would be overseen directly by the board with monthly reporting. He said he hoped things would be better. I said I hope so too. He said he was sorry for what had happened. I said I appreciated that. We stood there for a second. Then he said, "You really did your homework." I said I had to. He nodded and walked away. I parked my van in my driveway. No one said anything. No one left a sticker. No one called a tow truck. I treated my walkway when it snowed, and no one showed up at 11 at night with an infrared thermometer. Winter ended. Spring came. The snow melted. The yellow boot print markers washed away. I still have the evidence binder. I keep it in my closet, just in case. Because this is an HOA, and you never really know when the next Karen is going to show up with a clipboard and a bad attitude. But for now, it is quiet. The board follows the rules. The management company sends out notices with proper timelines. I go to work. I come home. I park in my driveway. And no one bothers me. Until next time, take care.